I'm going to just continue with some of the slides. I also want this to be pretty interactive. I like an exchange of ideas so folks can kind of go back home and think about, I never thought about looking at this thing this way. I'd like to go through the elements, and as we talk about them, I'm going to ask folks to give you some ideas around maybe something they can do when they return around voice. Maybe there's something now that's come to their attention. So voice, the ability of the defendant to tell his or side of the story directly in court, testimony directly through his attorney. Having a voice makes people feel like they have an active role in the system. And so you all do the work to make sure that people get the system. You are the grease that makes the wheels go. And I'd like to think about and talk about some spaces, even in terms of employee relationships, where you think you can do something around voice that might change some of the things that are happening. An example for me, when I became the chief judge, I realized that we were not dealing and understanding how much the courthouse was the identity of some of our employees. Because they spend so much time there. I would always scratch my head when I was like, oh, these two people are hanging out. Because when they hang out and it breaks up, it now pours into the courthouse because now this is their coworker and their friend. And I had an employee go on vacation and I kept getting these, what we call duplicate tickets, which meant that somebody was just printing them up. I couldn't get these actual tickets to dispose of. And I was like, I'm not doing one more case with a duplicate ticket. Go get those tickets. And someone came and said, oh, they are locked in Ann's office. And I said, how are they going to be locked in Ann's office when Ann works in a cubicle? She don't have a door. Like, it's impossible. And they were like, well, she has a door now. So what Ann did was she went and brought this huge piece of cardboard from home, went on vacation for a week and put it in the cubicle to serve as a door. But it's a cubicle, right? So it's not a door. But the employees were respecting Ann's cardboard door because she also left a note which said, don't touch the stuff on my desk. You see what, so I had to go see this cardboard door. I felt like you just want to, and I'm like, this is insane. But it was because she was having these issues around identity and around property at the job. She worked every weekend. And so she really felt that this cubicle was her office and the employees would not get the original tickets that she just happened to have in her office. Listen to me calling it her office, you see? See what perception does? That she had on her desk. And so I realized I needed to kind of have a conversation about what was happening in this department. And she needed to be heard. And it was voice. Voice was the issue. Nobody was listening. So she was taking these really grandiose acts around what was her property, what was her responsibility, wanting a promotion, and all the time that she spent there. And so for me, I was like, oh, this is, and again, like I said, I was just on the bench and no, I couldn't get these original tickets because people were just kind of walking around this personality. And so how it was impacting the court. So let's talk about anything that you think maybe would help in terms of efficiency and dignity and humanity when you go back around voice in your spaces. Maybe that can be done. I was happy to hear one of the clerks talk about how people don't listen to the clerk and how I'm like, that is such a danger when you don't listen to the people who are in the courtroom before you get out. How could you not listen to the person who sees folks before you see them or see what's happening in the courtroom? Anybody want to talk to me about, well, yes, ma'am.
Right there.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I found that was very important is when you're calling a meeting and you're getting ready to implement something, to just say out loud, who is impacted, but who's not in this room?
Ooh,
So
yes.
maybe we need to get that person into the room whether it's the end user or the customer who's impacted, or maybe someone has some information from that perspective that they can bring to the conversation.
Absolutely. Does anyone work in an institution where that does not happen? 3 people have a meeting and then it has to trickle down. There's a hand that went up. There's a hand back. Oh, I'm sorry.
We have a lot of new judges that have come in the last couple of years. And definitely, I'm the trial court administrator, so I go to talk to them at the beginning and kind of give them my advice on how they can be successful. And it's definitely listen to the voice of the people in your courtroom, your team leader, your court clerk, your probation officer, whatever, because, they need to, I say to them, you're new to being a judge. Yes, you've got a law degree, but these are the people that have been living and breathing these cases for years. So you want to be successful, you listen to them. And then on the flip side, we tell the staff, be respectful, but speak up because we need to make the judges the best they can and give them the information that they need.
Absolutely. That's so powerful. I call it the hand that would come up. I would just see the hand on the bench. Maybe you can't do that. Recess! Go in the back and find out. That's what it was. It was the signal that you are going somewhere you can't go. And sometimes the person is telling, I can't do that in the system, right? That was always a cue for me. I can't do that in the system. I was like, oh, the system can't do it. That means I'm not supposed to do it, right? And so important that you have voice, important. I think I'm going to thank you for that for me, because I think when I'll be in New Mexico, but I'm going to spend more time talking to the judges about listening to the people who work for them, because I think that's why people get themselves into a lot of trouble, because they're not listening. They're not responding to the things that they should not be doing, or they're responding to what they think is disrespect. And the folks in the court are like, oh no, he comes here all the time. He just has a problem. Yes.
So we just went to a new case management system, and with that, we knew some of our procedures were outdated and things of that nature. So on a management level, you're always trying to bring in the frontline people because their voice matters, and they always give us a little bit more insight into what would work for them rather than what we can push towards them. And so it's always being able to get that voice, because they might have a better way of doing it than what we think might be the right way. And it's really helped us kind of develop new procedures, not only with the clerk side, but we have a juvenile court team too. And we're taking on some of their procedures that they originally did. And we're opening up the cases now on our side and getting their input too, as how did this work for you? Because this is brand new information for us too. So it's always being able to bring in those voices and working around that rather than kind of pushing our agenda.
Excellent. Excellent. Here's another one. Okay.
One of the things that is done a lot in our court is carving out intentional time for our employees and the staff, for them to come and just voice whatever they have, whether it's work stuff or not.
That's a funny thing to say at a courthouse, because the courthouse is usually, our institution is a closed one, closed to the community, closed to voices. And that's innovative to say, we want to hear what you need to talk about. And doing more of that, I think, gets more buy-in. It's so interesting to hear about like buy-in and how you get it. We had a court director before I became the chief judge, and she would have these hour-and-a-half meetings every week because she thought that more meetings was the answer. And my courtroom was outside of the meetings, and the clerks and administrators would leave the meeting, and you would hear them in the hallway literally say, I'm going back to doing it the way I do. I don't know why they did all that. Literally going back to doing it the way they wanted to do it. And it was just pointless, but they were having these meetings at this high level of just instructing down and not understanding that the folks, you have to get them to be a part of the process. Excellent, excellent. Yes. Yeah. No. Voices.
Yeah, so in my position, part of my responsibility is complaint remediation with court users. So providing them with an open ear to listen to what their concern is in depth, more than someone may have time to do at a window, is key in making sure that the public feels like they have a vested interest with our organizations, being able to express their concerns, and in my position being able to kind of centralize those, see if there are trends, see what discussions need to be had with my colleagues on ways to improve our customer service.
Excellent. Again, it's a scary space for judges and people at Highland, because when we started a community, it wasn't even an advisory board, but the first time they came in, they were hot with the courthouse. They were angry, and they were right. Like, they were right. We had dropped the ball, and we were dropping the ball, and the chief judge at the time he was angry, but we had to let them speak, right? So the first time you put out a suggestion box, all of the suggestions are mean because you never asked anybody. But you have to create spaces where people can tell you how to do a better job at serving them. How about that? At serving them. The court, it's the one institution where I tell judges we're public servants, and they're like, what are you talking about? Yeah, we are public servants. So people who are running these places have to understand that. That's excellent. Did you get a chance to speak? Neutrality. Talk to me about that. This idea that people are unbiased and perceived in applying legal principles consistently. Transparency, exploration as to how decisions are made can support neutrality. There is a jurisdiction, I won't say who because y'all probably here, that teaches their judges that when they give a bail or have a negative ruling, to not give the reasons why. Actually, when they're giving defendants bail, they tell them not to look at them. Now, I'm thinking, if you're not looking at me and I'm not getting what I've asked for, or getting a negative thing, the person is thinking the judge didn't do it, right? And so the importance of neutrality. I mentioned the clerk key in this instance is supposed to give people the documentation so that they can complete their expungement forms. But she doesn't want people to get expungements because she somehow is a judge, and not even a judge. She is prosecuting cases post-conviction and purposely making sure that people have to jump through hoops to get documentation that they should have access to. And so having to change this person's mentality around those things. What can we talk about around neutrality in our court systems, and people come to windows and how they're treated when their work is processed? Yes, ma'am.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As we've converted our court sessions from in-person to virtual, I've noticed that I've had some of, let's say, more experienced judges struggle with that transition, and they prefer the in-person experience. And there's been some pushback with transitioning to virtual because they feel it lessens the solemnity of the hearing, and they don't get the respect and the feedback from the audience per se that they would in person. And it's really getting them to change their mindset and how that virtual is still a courtroom and you can still control that courtroom. However, you have to use technology, which is sometimes somewhat of a challenge for some of the judges. So I think working more to get them to understand how they can make that process very similar, but using this new tool that they have when they're so used to just being in a courtroom with a court officer, with their clerk right next to them, and working in a different format.
And how having to transition to virtual and hating it is impacting neutrality for defendants or people or witnesses or victims, because the judges are pissed. They're pissed. I'm sorry, you can go ahead. And how that impacts, like I'm getting on the call angry.
The Access to Justice Commission in Illinois did some videos with self-represented litigants to hear about their experiences in court. And neutrality came up quite a few times. And one person said they were in the courtroom, they got called up for their case, and the judge was like chatting with the lawyer on the other side, and then only asked the lawyer questions about that particular case, and the person didn't even get to say anything.
Wow.
And so they felt very much like this case was totally, the judge was totally biased against them because of how they were acting with the lawyers. And so that put them in a certain headspace for the rest of their case and never felt like they were getting a fair shake. So it really can be impactful how judges approach neutrality.
Absolutely. Oh, we have one here. And what about our employees, how they approach neutrality, folks? I had one of my clerks used to, bless her heart, people would come in, oh, he's a regular judge. What is happening? What are you doing that for? He's a regular. She would just shout it out, oh, he's a regular.
With us, neutrality came into play. We have an old courthouse building, and the prosecutor's office has space in the courthouse. So if you were a defendant, you would be sitting at the defense table. You see the prosecutor walk out the back, and then you see the judge walk out the back.
Oh.
It's like, really? So you got to look at facilities and all of it when you think about it.
Wow. And that's another thing, I didn't mention it, but this idea, sidebar, legal, absolutely, I have every right to do it, but what it looks like when they go in the back, and if you have pro se defendants, your security said, oh, you can't go in the back with them, but they can't. What are they talking about? Why are they whispering? Even if it's your staff trying to, what is happening in my case? But wow, facilities, the prosecutor was coming out with the judge. Eesh.
Thank you, Judge. I think you asked a question about neutrality in terms of the, let's say the court clerks or the employees. So neutrality is going to happen at every level. So let's say you have a self-represented litigant come into a filing office, but let's say this case is maybe an ejectment where you think, okay, this person is a squatter. So now in your mind, you have all these things of how you feel about this potential person filing a response to potentially a complaint that was filed against them. You can't then try to do things to interrupt what's going to happen in their case because it's an ethics violation. It's not following best practices, and it isn't neutrality. We're all going to have these thoughts about people, when we talk about bias, and we have our training on that. But aside from that, we have to think about the ethics and the best practices. And we really, that really to me is a sign of a lack of trust for the justice system from the standpoint of that employee. So I think some training will help with that, understanding that you may have these thoughts, but you are not to interrupt justice. Allow this person to file, treat them with dignity and respect, and let that work itself out once it reaches the judge. So that way there's a fair process for all parties, because even if this person is a wrongdoer, perhaps it doesn't need interrupted in the way that you're trying to do it. Thank you.
But that's a great point, right? Because you kind of have flags for people in the courthouse. You do. You kind of want to, but the flag shouldn't be the whole department. Oh, hold on, I got to go get my supervisor because you're here. Or to be that obvious because, this person has come in and you're like, oh God, why are you here today? I'm about to go to lunch. But what it looks like and how that gets passed on, here comes these files, even bringing the files, the people who have to hear them in the snide comments impacts neutrality. Anything else? I like this idea that there's training on it, because I think that for employees, they don't know. They really don't know. They don't know. They think working at the courthouse is almost really being at the prosecutor's house. We're here to get justice, and they take on the personalities. What I always know is they take on the personalities of the judges. If the judges are mean, they're going to be mean to the folks who come on. If the judge is respectful, then the entire staff will behave that way. But having clerks and folks who are like, yeah, they're not supposed to do that. Helps. Yeah.
Just to follow up, where I really had to stress with my staff was how they took notes in the system, especially when someone called in, and how they spoke about the call, how that could affect the next person got the case and looked at those notes.
For example, what would be an example of a note that might be?
Well, we work at the same courthouse.
Oh,
I
okay.
definitely have an example. There was one time where we had one of our regulars. He would come in and he was dressed a certain way. He had a ginormous white cross on him. He had a huge hat going on. And in my clerk chat, everybody was like, who is this guy? What is going on with him? And I try to leave the chats open for them to express things that they couldn't in the courtroom.
Mm-hmm.
So they were talking about it, and I'm like, guys, do you actually know his story? And they're like, no, of course not. But the minute I told them, he had a late diagnosis, mental health. His wife left him because of it. He's now struggling to get his cures back. He comes to the courthouse. So he might not be in your Portland for any reason other than you are the first open courtroom he sees, and he needs that stability for his life. But it's like the minute I said that to all the clerks, they're like, oh, he can come to our courtroom anytime.
Yeah.
And it's like,
right?
it just totally changed the dynamic.
Yeah.
Hey, a couple of things as everyone's kind of sharing these experiences have popped into my mind. We have been working on trauma-informed court practices and treating everyone as if they're coming in with some type of trauma, because many people are in our courthouses. We teach customer service to our court staff, all of them, because they are the first people. The judge is a lot of times the last person someone sees. It's also critically important how they interact. But one example that our court reporter shared was he was seated in the courtroom for a murder trial, doing his job. The court took a recess. The family was still there, the grieving family. And the judge and the attorneys, all of them, started talking about their golf game plans for the weekend and laughing and joking together in the courtroom. And so he was remarking in our class about how that looked to him as an observer. But, just the fact that the court staff who were joking like that, the judge and the attorneys were really completely unaware, just totally unaware that the people were in the courtroom. And so that's why we're trying to do better with trauma-informed practices, because we're all humans and we're all in there going through something. And whenever anyone in the court kind of aligns in a way that's not of the somber or serious nature of what we're doing, it goes sideways and it jeopardizes everything we've worked so hard to do.
Mm-hmm. You're in a place of mourning, both sides, right? The person who's being tried and the family that's, and being aware of that. Wow. Fantastic. Wow. Understanding. Now, because people get arrested, and I didn't know that what I was doing was wrong. And so this idea, even in law school, people have a responsibility to know what the law is. Now, who can know what all the law is, obviously, but that is a position that comes from the first point of contact with law enforcement. And then it happens once people come to court. People have an expectation that people are going to know what the process is. When I asked folks to get, you need a public defender. No, I'm going to represent myself. I don't want no public pretender judge. And I'm like, well, you probably have seen too many scenes of, Law and Order? And let me tell you, who always wins? The prosecutor always wins in Law and Order. So this idea that you need to figure it out because there are no do-overs. But we also have an expectation when people come in, where they should stand, how they should get certain paperwork filed. And the fear, I think, we overly emphasize, I can't give you legal advice. But we're not asking courts to give legal advice. We're asking people to show folks how to get things done. And just to understand, the judge said to come back, there's the settlement conference the next time you come back, what that means. And oh, the judge says I don't have to come back. What's going to happen when I'm not there? And so knowing what will happen during court appearance. I like this, that DMV was sending people text messages. It'd be nice if we got on systems. And I don't know if some of you are already on a system that people get notices. Who's on a system that people get notices? Yeah, where are you guys from? Tell me. Arkansas, can you talk to us about that? And because it goes straight into understanding.
So we use a text messaging system to notify them of their court date, payment reminders. I use it for my probation officer to send out when they're supposed to meet with them. We use it for their drug testing and our DWI court participants, you know, just anything, because we get a faster response if we have a question or reach out to a defendant by that method versus picking up the phone and calling.
Yeah.
I'm from Maricopa County in Arizona, and we use ours. It's in-house, so we did some analytics on what type of hearings had the highest failure to appear rate, and that's how we've been rolling it out so that they're targeted. And in addition to that, we also use it to notify people of scratch cases. So that's in our jurisdiction. That's when the prosecutor declines to file charges after the initial appearance. So that way they're not coming to court unnecessarily. We just had to really wordsmith the language in the text message so that it was easy to understand while still getting the vital information across, and it wasn't a giant text message.
Wow. There's a person in the back who uses, is that the same jurisdiction?
No, we do it in New Jersey for pretrial defense.
Oh, you're using it? Oh, wow. For pretrial. For pretrial, we're doing it. Municipal court, we need it bad. Were you in the same jurisdiction? You had your...
No, we do. I happen to be South Dakota. We do probation, jury, court dates, a lot of that. And it is really effective.
Yeah. I like this idea of also telling folks, your case has been dismissed, and kind of keeping folks who don't need to come to court out and giving them information. Yes, ma'am.
In Missouri, they can go on, we use a statewide court management system. They can go on in and sign up for what's called Track This Case. And every time something is entered on the case by the court, they will get notification of a change or anything. And for public transparency, any open case, anyone can go in and sign up for Track This Case, and it will send notification every time something is entered on that case.
That's excellent. That's excellent. Using the technology. Yeah. This is what it looks like for folks. How do I get help? Okay. Anybody want to tell me what's going on here?
Let's get started.
Anybody? You want to tell me what it says? Experts versus novices, making sense of language.
Okay, according to research at Cambridge University, it doesn't matter in what order the letters in a word are. The only important thing is that the first and last letter be at the right place.
Right? And so, again, we are the experts. Everyone who works at the courthouse is an expert. They understand. They've seen these things multiple times. The challenging thing with video court now is that people don't have an additional person to ask, what did the judge just say? Right? So my phone is constantly ringing. I went to court. The judge said I was a criminal. I need to get a public defender. I'm like, the judge didn't say you were a criminal. She said you had a criminal charge. And it's those things. But sometimes the expert, the officer at the door, or the court attendant, or the clerk, what did the judge say I had to do? What room did I have to go to? That doesn't happen now when you're on a virtual screen and you don't have access to people, unless we're creating special rooms where people kind of, before they leave, can ask follow-up questions. But I love this example because I'm a native English speaker so that I can do that. But if you're not, this is what the world looks like for folks. And especially if you are in communities where people are poorly educated, when I find out that people are they can't read or write. So sometimes I'd assign an essay and I'm like, there were signs that people, I could tell if they couldn't read or write, how they would hold on to the paper and never look at the words on there. They would come back multiple times and the public defender form wasn't filled out, wasn't completed. So sometimes we just kind of said, oh, you know what, just have the clerk help you fill that out or whatever it was. But this is what it feels like when you walk into our spaces and there's legal jargon and you don't know why you're there and you don't know when you're going to get an opportunity to tell the judge that you did not do this, that your neighbor upstairs is crazy and they just don't like you. And, you know, all of these things are happening, but you have to go to court and you don't understand. So one of my favorite, thank you for being able to read that. And respect. What does it mean? What does it mean for folks to experience respect, being addressed? I do Mr. and Mrs. Mr., Mrs., I do, last name if I have to, just last name. Officers that would often come into court off the street to work my courtroom. Move your arm, they're yelling from the bench. I'm like, whoa, whoa, officer, I'm the only person who gets to holler in here. You want to talk to that person? Go over there and have a conversation. Because it's disrespectful for the judge is not screaming from here into the courtroom. And what I started to learn that even the police department that are not a part of the court, they would kind of tell people, oh, the judge does this, the clerk doesn't like you to touch any of this stuff, don't get too close. Like they begin to tell the new people who come into the courtroom what the rules are, but there should be some kind of clearly defined rules that are respectful to people. I'm sorry, did I ask, did we do understanding, any suggestions around understanding? We did some suggestions around the text. Did we have any other suggestions about making sure people understand better? I'm sorry, I went too fast here and here. Where's the microphone? Mic right here. Oh, I'm sorry, there you are.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm with the National Center for State Courts, and we have a lot of resources around plain language. We have what we call our plain language glossary online and a number of other resources to help courts kind of develop informational materials that are in plain language.
Fantastic.
So if folks want to check those out, those are all on our website.
And good for training material for employees. Awesome. And there's one back there.
I think with also having it in plain language is, while we've come a long way with making sure forms are accessible in different languages, sometimes we find that they may get the initial forms as a pro se, maybe in Spanish, but by the time maybe if they're on probation, the notices are coming to their homes in English. The conditions are still in English. Certain things are still in English. And it's not just Spanish. You know, we have a lot of different cultures who are here and they just don't need something in Spanish. They may need something in French or in another language. And I think that if we could work, we are, you know, full of forms, full of orders. And when someone now has their case disposed, the order that they receive is probably the type words are in English. The amount that's there, that maybe are trying to decipher, is this is this the restitution or is this the fine or am I signing here? And so I think if we could just do, you know, just a little bit further steps in terms of the language. And also had something with respect, but
yes, thank you. I went too fast. Here's one.
We started with our language access plan to think outside of just the interpretation that defendants are obviously entitled to, but there's bigger parts of that process that they may not understand. So we started working with a company called Wordly that each court user, no matter who they are, can scan a QR code outside of the courtroom and the entire proceeding will be translated for them on their device to whatever language they like. And they can select from 50 or 60 different languages.
But we recognize that a defendant, while they will be provided an interpreter for their hearing, they're not understanding what's happening in the courtroom for every other case as it's being called. So being able to understand the tone and what's happening for the cases preceding theirs gives them a little bit more comfort when it's their turn. For victims that may not be English speaking, they have the ability to hear and understand or at least read and follow along in their own language so that they're really understanding each proceeding as it's happening. The family members of a defendant or a victim, again, if they're not English speaking, are able to follow along with each of those proceedings, understand maybe why bail was set the way it was. Because while we will always have an interpreter for the defendant, we may not be able to provide a live interpreter for every court user. And so understanding that, our obligation to have excellent customer service is for every court user, and kind of broadening the scope of what that looks like.
Absolutely.
I am ESL. So one question is, how good is your translation? Right? Have you given this to an official translator who translated everything word by word? But does somebody from natively in that other language understand it? Like we said, that is a courtroom in Spanish. You can have like a 5-word phrase for the courtroom, or you just in this realm say el courtroom, and every Spanish speaker in the US will still get what that is. You don't need a really convoluted phrase. So the quality of translation is into actual like vernacular, not just word by word. It's incredibly interesting.
And I'm glad that you brought that up. Actually, you can keep that for him. Communities that have indigenous speaking folks, right? So maybe you have a South American community, but you have folks who are non-Spanish speakers because they speak the indigenous language of Guatemala. So how are you handling that? How are you handling that? How are you making people aware that is an issue? We're not assuming, this person looks like or says they're from this country.
Even before you go to indigenous languages in Guatemala, go to every Latin country. They all speak a different Spanish, every single one of them. And they make fun of it, they know about it. But there is so many differences between Mexico, Panama, and Argentina. It's not all the same Spanish.
Anyone here I know in New Mexico, this is also an issue, indigenous or dialects that you have to be aware of to make sure that you're getting appropriate translations. Any more understand? What about when you have a person who has cognitive issues, traumatic brain injury? You can tell it's English. How are any suggestions for potentially what has to happen in those spaces?
We actually had a recent meeting where we had somebody come out to not only explain about our language access plan, but also about those with developmental disabilities who may need time to process what's being explained to them.
Yes.
So people who are on the spectrum who may need those extra few seconds. And I have some judges who I call fast talkers, because they just are so used to saying similar things case after case. And I purposely brought this group in to have that talk because they had to recognize that while they know what they were saying, everybody in the audience doesn't necessarily absorb it at the same rate. So it was helpful to have them see that it wasn't just a language barrier, but maybe a perception barrier as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Excellent. Okay. Now move on to respect. Recognizing and addressing them as individuals, recognizing that it's very important to them. We're talking about trauma-informed care. Anytime somebody gets something from the courthouse to come, they're in crisis. Like we have to traffic, it creates a sense of crisis for them. And understanding that's why they come sometimes with such anxiety. Sometimes they come and there's some aggression, they're angry, you're bringing family fight into the courthouse. You're bringing child support. You're bringing all of these things, and on top of that, not knowing. So, what does it look like? Are there places where we can show respect? Places where we can address some of those things and how we engage people as they come into the courthouse? Any ideas that we've also already done, we've already started doing?
Mine is more of a story. There was one time where a lady who was having a mental health crisis went through my mom's neighborhood, started knocking down plants. She ended up breaking into a house across the street. And suddenly my mom was a witness to a criminal case. And she calls me one day and she's like, "Oh my goodness, Erica, I've been called for grand jury." And I'm like, okay. Because me as a courthouse worker is like, okay, grand jury happens every day. But I had to pause for a minute and recognize that she was terrified of this. Like, she was genuinely like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what I'm expected to do. I don't know what to do while I'm there. But the minute I sat down with her for just 10 minutes and said, this is what grand jury is. This is who you're going to be in front of. This is what they're going to be asking of you. All of a sudden, all of that anxiety just melted away. And she was like, okay. And then she called me the next day and she's like, everything you told me was exactly what happened. And I'm like, perfect. So every time I have somebody with that anxiety coming to me, I'm just looking at them and I'm like, you're just like my mama. I just need to calm you down.
Exactly.
So it's like just kind of approaching people in that's that level of, you are as nervous as my mom was when she called me. All I need to do is take those 10 minutes.
Take those 10 minutes. Absolutely. Oh.
So I think of a situation where it's the end of the day. Everyone flies out of the courthouse at 5 o'clock, right? 5 o'clock on the dot. People are gone like a shot. So I'm going to the restroom, right? It's after 5. I'm using the restroom. I come out of the restroom and I see this elderly lady, and she's standing at the clerk's office with this complete devastated look on her face because everything's shut. And so I walk up to tell her, we're closed. I'm sorry, you're going to have to come back tomorrow. And she explains to me that she'd spent the last 15 minutes trying to get through security. She'd just gotten in the building. She had to file her small claims answer that day, or they were going to take default against her. And she just starts sobbing. And I'm thinking, what would I want? If this was my grandmother, how would I want someone to respond to her? And so I just, I explained to her that we were closed. I understood the situation. I told her that I'd do my best to take her paperwork right. It wouldn't be filed that day, but we'd talk to the administrator in the morning and figure out what we could do. And she was so relieved. She's like, "Oh, I'm going to buy you coffee." I'm like, "I'm sorry, I can't accept coffee." But she was so relieved. And every time she came in for the rest of that case, she'd ask for me. And I hold her hand and tell her what she needed to do. And it's just taking that extra step, right? That second that most staff, a lot of staff don't want to take because it's after 5 and it's time to go home. To realize that this is a human being who's trying to go through something very difficult.
And the story that she'll tell about how wonderful they were to her at the courthouse. And you don't have to be afraid when you show up.
So we had an issue where certain courts in our state won't allow self-represented litigants to bring cell phones into court. And we all know how important cell phones are people's everyday lives, their calendars, their form of communication, lots of different things. It can also be someone's safety plan if they're coming in for an order of protection. There's a lot of implications of not being able to have their cell phones. And what we found is that there was not a single court that prohibited cell phones. It was just certain people weren't allowed to have cell phones. And what message does that send about what we think of someone, how we respect them or don't respect them if we put this burden up for some people and not for others coming into the court?
Absolutely.
I offer to the conversation a big population to consider when you're thinking about respect are jurors. We send them this notice, tell them to be at court a certain time. We send them through all the security and we put them in a room. Hopefully, they'll be escorted to a courtroom or something like that, but there's the opportunity to communicate and tell them about the process, what to expect. I mean, sometimes they're not even allowed to bring in snacks from outside. The cell phones, all of that. So that's a whole big category when we're thinking about respect.
Yeah.
How can we do that better?
You're right. Those are some angry. And you pay them 15? New Jersey, how
We
much?
pay them $15 a day or something like that.
New Jersey, how much are you paying? New Jersey? Did I have a trial court administrator? You don't know how much we're paying juries? I think we're getting $5.
Yeah.
5, right? Yeah. Yeah, that's what I thought. I got a $5 check. $5. So imagine how angry your jurors are in the building.
I think another aspect of respect is having awareness of the room. You oftentimes, especially in high volume rooms, whether that's a filing office or something like that, you may have a self-represented litigant that comes in. They're very well put together. They're smiling. Paperwork is filled out complete. Now you're smiling. Y'all are having a good conversation. Okay, if you have 40 people behind them, they're all looking at that interaction. So let's say that next person isn't so well put together. They're coming up, the paperwork is halfway complete. They need help. They're kind of like, what do I do next? And then you go into the, oh, well, I can't give you legal advice. I can only give you legal information. You have to realize this person is potentially wondering, why am I getting this different treatment than that other person? And so just being conscious of that and trying to maintain a standard level of service and tone and behavior, even if that person doesn't have it all the way together because people are watching. And that goes with the public trust and confidence that you mentioned earlier.
Absolutely. What? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have a comment? Oh, go ahead.
I'm in probation, and one of the things that I do love about my officers, and it's a culture I try to develop across the board, is no matter what the charges are, you get to look into the depths of this person's case. And on my side, I have the adult supervision side. So I have the sex offenders, the DV strangulation cases, our mental health diversion, our mental health population, that when they come in, they're a whole person.
Yeah.
That when they're sitting in front of you and they're talking with you and you are going through their conditions of probation, you're still treating them as a whole person. That they're not feeling stigmatized. They're not feeling as if, you are talking to them through what you're seeing on the screen, that you're having all these preconceived notions about them. And it's the same thing also with our young people as well. We have our youths that are in our juvenile caseload as well. And sometimes this might be, and for most of the clients, and some of the times I see with our officers, when they're getting discharged and they get the thank you letters from the clients, or you have that young individual that for the longest time, these parents did not know how to work with this individual. And finally, they're seeing this person connected probably in a sports program or doing better in school. Because for many of them, this place is probably the first place that somebody probably looked at them, listened to them, or remembered and asked them about, their day or something, or remember the conversation before. Also with our homeless population as well, when they're coming in, you're not treating them as if that you can see that they're disheveled, that they need a shower. You're still treating them as a whole person. So I think that that's also very important.
Absolutely. Did you have a come up?
Yeah, I'll say this real quick. I was fortunate enough to have a really good supervisor, and she, when we came into training for the court, she always said to us that each one of you are one bad decision away from being on the other side of the glass. And so with that, she made it, or tried to make it a habit that we treated the person on the other side of the glass the way we would want to be treated, and to not match their energy. We may know what's going on with their case because we know the legal system, we know the process, but somebody who's getting a first misdemeanor or a traffic ticket or a teenager, they don't really know the process. They just know they got a citation. They may hear information from other people about their experience. So when they come in, they're guarded. She taught us not to match their energies because usually when they come in, they're scared, they're frustrated. We talked about in the previous session that they've been passed from one person to the next, to the next. The last person that they spoke to probably didn't give them much information or information that they understood. And when they finally get to you, you get to be the person that makes the difference.
Yes.
Where you can give them the right information,
where you can give them the positive experience where they can walk away feeling a different way than they did when they came in. And I feel like that's important as well. We talk about how we want someone to treat our mothers and our grandparents and things like that. But ultimately, how would you want someone to treat you in a situation?
Yeah.
Have my flight was destroyed coming here, and having to have a conversation with someone on the phone with customer service. I didn't know what the protocol was. So it made it easier for me to have someone who was able to walk me through the process. I could have been irate. I could have been frustrated. I could have been, any type of mood, but I was fortunate enough to have somebody who was calm and to walk me through that. And I think that's important because for us, it's our jobs, but to the person on the other side, it's their life. And they really don't know it.
Yeah. And how we treat the people we work with.
Hi, I just want to piggyback on what they said about the jurors and respect for our jurors to come in. We've had all these jurors to come in and they don't know what to expect. They don't want to be there. We pay them $15 a day. So what we try, up from $5 a day. So what we try to do is, we give them water and coffee, bottled water and coffee. We even provide snacks. On Tuesdays, our bailiffs go out and get Krispy Kreme donuts for them.
Oh.
Yeah. It's in our budget. And then, and then we even buy like the big boxes of chips and the crackers and the cakes and whatnot, and having them in there for them to choose from. And that kind of eases their mind. But I think the most thing for them is their time and sitting and waiting.
Yeah.
So we have a bailiff that's kind of like over there. They can't be in there all the time, but they're coming in and out and checking on them, letting them know what the judge is doing. And, we can't rush the judge and, so they can wait. And sometimes they make them feel more comfortable. They're not in the hallway as much, talking on the phone. Oh, I can't wait to get out. I don't know what they're doing, but it kind of helps them and show them that we do respect them and their time.
I love that. I love that. One, you're back behind you.
I think it's not only just respecting the person too, but creating environments where they feel comfortable coming in as well. So we just built a new courthouse, a new family division area, and it's very kid friendly, knowing that people might bring in their kids. So we have an interactive, colorful wall for them to kind of go play with. We have areas where there's fish that you can move around on a magnetic wall. Kids can color in color books when their parents are filling out forms. Just these items too, because it makes them feel like they can bring their kids to a courthouse because not everyone can have that childcare either. So just kind of making them feel comfortable coming is respectful as well.
Excellent. I'm going to do a mid-session, if you could help her pass those out very quickly, just very quickly. Mid-session evaluation, just fill them out real quick, and then we'll keep moving on real fast. Here, there's some forms. Can you help on this side? Oh, you have some. That's fine. I'm sorry. Let me tell you, Nathan is not playing around. Everybody is on point. I am like, wow. I go to conferences, they're like, you can't do any of that. I'm not moving, no. Just fill them out real quick if you can, so we can continue and jump in.
It's refined like he does.
You can just fill it out.
See what that has. But it's very important. We can. Us that too. Out the clear.
Do we need more? Have any more?
Never had seen it today. And then what else? That's not. What would have said? More people to cut extra and do it again. Yeah, that'd be.
Extra? You need any extra? How we doing? How we doing?
Did that first?
I got it. Yeah.
Only a few questions. Come on, guys.
I did that. You did what?
What's
I love this.
I didn't get.
Look at the
But like it's well,
Is there a problem with my evaluation?
no.
I love this. Talk to me about my evaluation. Talk to me about the form. This is so funny. It's like if your kids were in school doing this, you'd be like, don't be doing it yourself. Stop talking to your neighbor. Tell me about my evaluation form. Y'all have a problem with it?
Yes.
Tell me what's wrong with my form.
It's a draft.
It's in draft? Oh, my bad. What else is wrong? Is something else with my form? What's wrong with my form?
Wasn't I took
Say it again?
It's in the top wall. Don't know you answer question section.
Oh, my bad. Okay. I'll fix it for the next time. What else is wrong with the form? Who has pencils anymore? Say it again? At the end. Who asked me a question here? You did. What questions you asked me?
You're saying rate something. Whatever your thoughts so far.
I asked you to rate something, and why were you bugging me about rating?
Because I don't know what the numbers mean.
Oh, you didn't know what the numbers mean. Okay, I'll remember that the next time. Somebody in the back, talk to me about my form.
It asks for a name, which doesn't really lend to an anonymous survey.
Oh, yeah. I guess you could put your nickname on it. I wouldn't know. You were going to say something?
Oh, it's very small. I can't even see it.
Can't even see it. Why did I give you, how did the form make you feel?
No, here.
Huh?
Not
Not confident? Somebody else.
I don't like that.
Come on, talk to me. Frustrated? Somebody else. Your opinion didn't matter? What else did the form make people feel? Back there. Doesn't know. So you thought less of me, didn't you? You're like, damn, what is wrong? We were going good until she gave us, right? Why'd I give you the form? Because we love to give people forms. We love to create a form to resolve a problem. We love to do that. And if we followed some of the forms that we gave people who came into our courthouse, we would find that they go into a wasteland, into a cabinet that nobody looks at again. And these are some of the feelings. People usually get angry. This was funny because you all were like, at it, like, we got to get this form, but why can't she give us, why don't I know, 1 or 5? So, when I got the question, I was like, I can't even look because you guys were looking at me trying to ask questions. But that's it. It's like that feeling, the frustration. And I wanted you to feel the frustration that people feel when they come into court. Because that is, the institutional way of getting to solve a problem. We'll give them this form. They'll put all the information in it. And then our forms don't make sense to the people we give them to. Or we add another frustration. When I went to talk to the hospital, I found a great slide where, you go to the doctor's, they had all this paperwork before you can even tell the people why you're there. Even at the kiosk, you got to talk to the kiosk. Yeah. And it's frustrating, or you got to fill out a paper. The receptionist is not even here, fill this out. I need to tell you why it's an emergency appointment. I need to see the doctor. Do I really need to see the doctor? And so we have this space of forms that are frustrating and they make people feel stupid. Like, that's the worst part. We make people feel stupid because sometimes our forms are pointless. And that's what I'm telling you. When I started working as a chief, I was like, let me follow this document that everybody's in all the courtrooms. I don't even know who decided. And I was like, this is a worthless piece of paper that we make people fill out. There has to be a way to give people this information without having to stick this form in their face. Oh, yeah, good job. I'm happy that worked. You should have seen your faces. Upset with me? Upset with me. Procedures versus outcomes. That's what procedural justice, we are outcomes matter. People, like, what the key thing about procedural justice is that people will even be satisfied with the decision, even when you rule against them for the judges, which means that as long as they feel like that they got to participate, everybody does want to win. But if I'd rather someone walk out the courtroom and say, she got it wrong, but at least she was fair. And we want people to feel that way when they come through our spaces. So this right here, I was going to skip it. Here's what upset me about. You see where the judges are?
Yeah.
Auto mechanics have more trust. No. We're near auto mechanics. That's a problem for me because I know what the auto mechanics do when I go take my car, right? And that you're like, wait a minute. But that's reflective of state, members of Congress, all those things. But it was painful to me to see that we were that close to the auto mechanics because you don't know what's wrong with your car, but they sure can find a bunch of ways. Oh no, you need a new battery. You need this, you need that. And this is what they folks felt when they were asked about ratings of honesty and ethical standards. Wow. Okay. I know. Sorry, I didn't even think I was going to run out of time. Okay. Here's an exercise I want you all to do. It's called the headline. We went through, can we just hand these out? You're going to take your pen and create this diagram on the document that I sent you. I got inspired to do this exercise coming down. That's why, and NACM is paperless, so my bad. So I had to do it on paper. But I want us to use this as an exercise in future thinking. I'm going to go back and give you, here are the principles of procedural justice. I want you to think about these principles, what we learned, some of the exchange of ideas that we had today. Think about one positive thing that can happen when you go back using some of these standards. The first line is going to be a headline. This is what you want the newspapers to say about your job, about the courthouse, about a courtroom, about a project you're working on as it relates to, because you've now instituted procedural justice. Everybody's doing it. It's one thing that can happen that can end up in the newspaper. And so the top line would be the headline. The bullet points would just be some of the work. And you're going to draw a little sketch of what it is and make up a fictitious quote. So for me, using procedural justice meant that I saw a young college student who came before my court, and I ended up giving her a program and dismissed her case, and she got an immediate expungement. I went to do a book signing at Rutgers Law School, and a girl comes up to me and she's like, I don't know if you remember me. You might not remember me, but I did something really stupid, ended up in your courtroom. And I thought, was I yelling at you? And she said, you asked me what I wanted to do, what I was going to do with my life. You were very upset that I was in court. And I told you that I wanted to be a lawyer. And as soon as she said it, I remembered her because everyone in the courtroom laughed. Because they were like, how are you going to be a lawyer and you're on the wrong side of the bench? Like, I remembered. And she said, I want to let you know that you really inspired me, you really encouraged me, and I'm a first-year law student in this building. A lot of ugly tears, right? Because this is someone who came through a space and it could have gone the other way for her. My headline, from troubled teen to graduate law student, right? My next section is, the respect that she was shown in court really made her reflect on her life choices. She understood that she had other choices that she could make to achieve her goals. And then I'll do a last one. She really believes in the process, the legal process, after having experienced it. My quote will be, I had the opportunity to voice my thoughts and opinions based court. And it made all the difference. That's a headline I would love to see in the newspaper. Not just for me, but because of the other people who will see young people like this. And these young people will be able to achieve their dreams because we used our institutional authority to make a difference. This is a kid that we got so good at it at the courthouse that if she had been in another courtroom, a clerk would have walked her over and would have told her judge, just send her to Judge Pratt, just send her to this court, and gotten her out of the regular process. That's power. That's power. When people come in and the judge doesn't, who was the clerk, that's the person who was the clerk who says, we get to see things. I wouldn't have seen her had someone not sent her to my courtroom. So if you could just think of one thing you would like to see happen, and not a big, if you're working on a project, just one thing, one positive change that you would like to see in the local newspaper about the court. I mean, some of us tell people who work at the courthouse and they go, ugh, right? Ugh. Just a headline. Just a headline, one positive thing that you know that if we begin to see the humanity in people, if we begin to see the humanity in the people we work with, what's one positive thing that could happen that you would love to see in the newspaper about a courtroom, a story, a probationee, something positive that you know could happen if we shift it. Yes. You did it already? Ooh, okay.
So the headline would be jury service, best day ever.
Wow. Wow.
And the sketch, I got called in for jury service, appeared at 8:00, was led into the court at 8:00, was picked up by the courtroom by 8:15, understood what was going to happen. I sat on the jury, had a great experience, helped the court render justice, and I received a timely check, which reflected a Reels Day pay.
I'm going to give you a hand for that. Anybody else, an idea? I really believe that we have more power to impact our communities. I know we do. We have more power to impact our communities and it is important that we understand the power as times are changing, that the court understands its power as a branch of government to improve its community. People are looking to us to make decisions and to do the right thing. And it is important that we are thinking about someone moved over there. Had anybody want to share, even if you just have a headline? Anybody have a headline for me they want to share? What's one positive thing we could go back and really just get done? Yes, this one over here.
The headline for me, I work in probation, and it would just be simple. It says probation saves lives.
Whoa. Whoa.
I still think media-wise, I mean, the perception about probation is still very much what you see on TV, and it's very minimal. You either hear about someone being sentenced to probation, and you just come up with an idea of what it is, and most people, for the most part, the general perception is that it's just like parole, and it's completely different. The wraparound services, the mental health.
Stop. Can you stop? Give me a point that the article is going to say that's different than what the media says. You just said wraparound. So
wraparound services. That when a case comes to probation, that it's not just about service, it's about a team that comes together to provide services to treat the issue that they have. So that they don't do it again.
Excellent. Give me another point.
That this is also in conjunction with not just probation within itself, but within the community.
Exactly.
Community involvement is important. So you have the investment from the community that they're going to return back to.
Yes. Can you give me a fictitious quote? What would you want a quote in that article to say?
In today's society, you have to understand that how you thought about the courts in the past has changed. That includes probation.
You see, I mean, if we can't see it here, how do we go back home and make them see it? I used to have a thing on the bench, stay focused on the goal no matter what's happening. And I'd have to look at it. I put it right and stay focused on the goal no matter what's happening. That's excellent. Yeah. 2 minutes? Okay, one more. What's your head point? Your headline. Headline. What's your headline?
Mine would be Drug Court Saves Lives.
Okay.
And it's a quick story, but we had a gentleman that called our office and asked if he could come to drug court. And the judge that was presiding over drug court didn't know why this gentleman wanted to come back. He presented the judge with his 20-year sobriety coin.
Wow.
From and basically said that the judge had saved his life. And he was there today to talk to all the other drug court participants to say how much it made a difference.
Amen. Wow. So I'm so sorry. I had Courthouse Family Feud we were going to play. I just have so much stuff that I want to do, but I'm really encouraged by this. I'm really encouraged by this because our communities count on the work that we do. They really do. And as I walk the community without security, it's because I know, and they know, I'm a part of this community, whether I work here, live here, and we want what's best for the folks here, and we have power to do it. So thank you so much for having me, and good luck. And follow me on social media, get on my website, talk to me, let me know. My email address is prattvf@gmail.com. Pratt, Victoria Frank @gmail.com. Email me. If you need me to come talk to your folks, but email me, let me know how it's going. If you have any thoughts, it's helpful. This has been really helpful. Wait till the judges see me.
Well, on behalf of NACM, I would like to thank you for coming and not only giving this presentation, but the plenary session as well.
Thank you so much.
Please don't forget to rate the speaker as well as the session in the app. And thank you for attending.
Yes. And finish your headlines.